Donald Trump is not going to go easily. Donald Trump has a history of never saying, "Well, I gave it my best shot and it didn't work out." He has never says that. If he loses in court, it's because the judge was on the take or the judge was biased. When he lost to in a primary election in 2016 to Texas Congressman. Ted Cruz, he said he was robbed. It was a scandal. He never ever says that he lost. So yes, if he loses this election, especially if it's going to take days like it did the last time for the election to be for the decision to be rendered, I can guarantee you there's going to be all sorts of uh, recriminations and who knows what can happen. A lot of people are very concerned about this.
Well, Kamala Harris has a narrow overall lead over Donald Trump, but may still not have enough support to win the 2024 US presidential race. That's according to the latest poll of polls by the Times and Sunday Times. Let's talk to Conan Nolan, political correspondent for NBC. Good evening to you, Conan.
Good evening.
Well, so many unexpected twists and turns in this race. Kamala Harris out and about this evening, talking to the National Association of Black Journalists. Tell us more about what we've heard from her.
Well, she was asked, among other things, if she had a policy directive when it came to the war in Gaza, because a lot of young people are certainly interested in this. It's percolating up again on college campuses. And she simply talked about the importance of, A, getting the hostages back, but also getting a ceasefire. When it came to actually implementing a arms embargo, something like that, which one of the journalists had asked for, she sort of dodged that. But this is the same organization, remember, that Donald Trump spoke to a few weeks back, where he claimed that he didn't think that Kamala Harris was black. This is a group that has made some news of its own. Donald Trump, in the meantime, back on the campaign trail, and he again, very different tone when it comes to this second assassination attempt. The first time he talked about ratcheting down the rhetoric and bringing the country together. Now he's pointing fingers at Democrats for their what he called rhetoric that had emboldened this person to attempt to take his life. So again, there's 55 days to go, and who knows what's coming up next. But it's going to be a rocky road towards Election Day.
Yeah, and Trump's vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance, also voicing those accusations that it's the rhetoric of the Democrats that actually led to this second assassination attempt on Donald Trump within a matter of weeks.
Right, and there's no question. There's been the volatility on the campaign trail has been off the charts, but of course the Republicans and Mr. Vance himself, to a certain degree, has himself to blame. And it was Donald Trump who long ago called the news media the enemy of the people. So you had an increase in assaults on reporters. So yeah, it would be nice if everybody ratcheted things down. And yes, there was a Democratic congressman from New York who went on TV and said that Donald Trump should be eliminated. That's the kind of rhetoric he's talking about. He makes a good point there. That's the kind of wording that should be that both sides should stay away from, especially when you do have individuals out there, including this one that was arrested in Florida, who have the capability of ending the life of a president, and in this regard, got remarkably close.
Yeah, and of course, for Donald Trump, just the second assassination attempt in just a matter of weeks. He is due back out on stage. I'm looking at pictures of some of the crowds already gathering in Michigan, one of the key swing states in this election. How do you think these attempts on his life, of course, the previous one came much closer when he was hit on the ear. How do you think that they have affected the former president?
I don't think they've affected him at all. And we saw that in at the Republican convention following the first assassination attempt, where he actually was hit in the ear, and his speech at that convention started off where he talked about what he went through, what happened, and we had been told that it was going to be one of these. Listen, we want to bring the country together, but then he went off script, and it went back to the kind of things we had heard from him on many occasion before. So I don't think it's going to have an impact on him. I doubt it's going to have an impact on the race. There's very little elasticity in the electorate in this country. People are, he has a base of support that's rock solid behind him, and there's Kamala Harris seems to have her own rock solid support that she's put together ever since Joe Biden left the race, and so it's hard to imagine this is going to be anything but an extremely close race. And yes, a couple of battleground states will decide it.
Yeah, I mean, quite extraordinary how close this race still is. Kamala Harris, of course, really revived Democrat spirits when she became the candidate replacing Joe Biden after the last debate. It doesn't look as though there's going to be another debate, does it? Even though Kamala Harris has said she's happy to have one.
Right. I think one of the problems that the Democrats had was that this debate, where she did extremely well, was held way too early. They would like another shot at the apple closer to election day. The Trump campaign, I believe, believes that there's nothing in it for them, which is why they're going to stay away from it. I have to tell you, the polls have shown it neck and neck. One of the problems, though, is that remember the last two presidential cycles in 2016 and 2020, the polls were off. Donald Trump under polls routinely. So when Democrats see that it's neck and neck in a national poll, that makes them very nervous because in 2016 and 2020, they were up by several points in those national polls, and they ended up losing. And so, so there's a real concern. They want to be up by several points nationally in order for them to have a chance winning in these battleground states where the Electoral College, which is how we elect a president in this country, is actually chosen. So there's a lot of work to be done, but again, there aren't that many people who haven't made up their mind.
Yeah, and one of our listeners, Helen, got in touch to say the first assassination attempt should affect Trump. Someone died. Of course, there was one of those who was there in the crowd that was killed in that first assassination attempt. Conan, when you look at this incredibly tight race, which means that it is quite possible that it might take a few days for the result of the election to actually become clear, because we're already hearing that some states are saying that it could take them some time to verify the results. When you look at what has happened so far, when you hear the rhetoric, when we know the deeply divisive nature of US politics and the language that's being used on both sides, do you think there is a real risk of violence around polling day or immediately afterwards?
It's unprecedented, and yes, that is the big worry. One of the problems that we've had is that on election day, over generations, people went, cast their ballot, and the ballots were counted that day. The new policy in so many states, including California, New York, and others, is by voting by mail weeks in advance, and that is labor intensive. It takes a long time to count those ballots, which means you don't get a finality on election night. It takes days for those ballots to be counted, and if it's close, people are they don't know. Um, and there's a suspended animation when it comes to the election, and that breeds this antagonism. That breeds this mistrust, and we saw that in 2006, in 2020, when we had the riot at the Capitol, and there are plenty of people wondering if the election is really close this time, and it takes days to count the ballots and decide who's the winner. Donald Trump is not going to go easily. Donald Trump has a history of never saying, well, I gave it my best shot and it didn't work out. He never says that. If he loses in court, it's because the judge was on the take or the judge was biased. When he lost to in a primary election in 2016 to Texas Congressman Ted Cruz, he said he was robbed. Again, it was a scandal. He never ever says that he lost. So yes, if he loses this election, especially if it's going to take days like it did the last time for the election to be for the decision to be rendered, I can guarantee you there's going to be all sorts of uh, recriminations, and who knows what can happen. A lot of people are very concerned about this.
Conan Nolan, political correspondent for NBC. Really good to speak to you. Thanks so much, Conan.
The pleasure's mine.